Here's a question most couples and blended families have never asked out loud. Is there money in your relationship that you don't talk about? Maybe it's a separate account you've kept since before the marriage. Maybe it's how much you quietly spend on your kids versus your stepkids. Maybe it's a debt from before that hasn't really come up. If any of that sounds familiar, you are not alone, and you are not a bad person either. But today, April and I want to talk about something called financial infidelity, because in blended families, it shows up in ways most people never expect. And left unaddressed, it causes real damage to both the marriage and the financial plan. April, let's start with the basics. When we say financial infidelity, what does that actually mean?
Financial infidelity, and I want to say this carefully, it doesn't necessarily mean someone is lying outright. It means there are financial behaviors happening in the relationship that one partner doesn't know or doesn't have full visibility into. That could be a hidden purchase, it could be a separate savings account the other spouse doesn't know about, it could be debt that was never fully disclosed. But in blended families specifically, it often looks much subtler than any of that.
And it's more common than most people realize. According to a study by the Harris Poll conducted for the National Endowment for Financial Education, we'll put that citation in the description below. 43% of Americans admit to some form of financial infidelity, and we'd expect that number to be even higher in blended families, given the added complexity of multiple obligations, children from different relationships, and financial histories that go back well before this marriage.
I want to be clear about something. This is almost never malicious. When this pattern comes up in blended family financial planning, the underlying driver is almost always love. Yes, love. Wanting to protect your kids, wanting to avoid a fight, wanting to keep the peace. The intention is usually good. The impact can quietly erode both trust and the financial plan.
April, I want to go a little deeper here because I think there's something important about why this pattern shows up so often, specifically in blended families. And it has to do with everything people bring with them before the marriage even starts.
You're right. And I think about this a lot. By the time most people are in a second marriage or in any blended family situation, they've usually been through something significant: a divorce, the death of a spouse, maybe a long period of single parenting, a legal battle that dragged on for years. They've had to fight for their financial footing. They've made difficult decisions alone, and a lot of the money habits that are now in place have had years to become ingrained. This isn't someone who's just starting out. These are patterns that have been built and reinforced over a long time.
And there's something else I think is really worth naming. When someone has gone through a contentious divorce, and many people coming into blended families have, the topic of money became associated with conflict, with stress, with attorneys and arguments and court dates. And that conditioning doesn't just disappear when you fall in love again. At some level, even when things are good, the brain has been trained to expect that any money conversation might lead to another fight. So people avoid it. They stay quiet. They handle things separately just to keep the peace.
We hear this theme come up in financial planning with blended families all the time. The desire to finally have a space where there isn't conflict, where money isn't the source of tension. And that's completely understandable. The irony is that the avoidance, that silence, creates more tension in the long run, not less. The things that aren't talked about don't just go away, they build.
And there's a third layer too. Both partners come into the marriage as independent financial adults who have been managing their own money often for years. The autonomy that felt necessary and healthy during and after the divorce can quietly become a wall inside the new marriage, not out of bad intentions, just out of habit. April, let's make this concrete. What are the most common patterns that come up when working through financial planning with blended families?
The most common pattern is what I'd call silent preferential spending. One parent is spending more on their biological children, activities, clothing, gifts, college savings, in ways that aren't fully transparent. And the other spouse either doesn't know or suspects it, and neither of them wants to bring it up. The second is the just in case account. One partner keeps a separate account the other doesn't really know about. It feels like self protection after a hard divorce. But the other partner, when they do find out, it can feel like distrust at the foundation of the marriage. And the third is financial exclusion, where one spouse handles all the money and makes all the decisions, and the other is essentially kept in the dark. Even when the intention isn't to control, it creates a real vulnerability for the partner who isn't in the loop, especially when something unexpected happens.
And none of these start as a crisis. They start as small decisions made quietly, often from a place of exhaustion or self-protection. But over time, they do compound. And part of what we do as financial planners is create the structure and the neutral space for these things to come to the surface before they become a bigger problem. April, for families who are hearing this and thinking, some of this is us, what does that path forward actually look like?
The first thing I'd say is this is not a conversation to have at the kitchen table when you're both tired and stressed. These conversations go much better with structure, and they deserve that space with a neutral third party in the room. One of the roles we play at White Oak Planning is what you might think of as a financial director, someone who helps a couple get the full picture on the table, understand where the risks are, and build a coordinated plan together. That includes looking at how money is structured between the two of you, whether your legal documents reflect your actual wishes, whether you have the right insurances in place, and whether your tax situation is being handled in a way that makes sense for your current family structure. It's not about assigning blame, it's about getting clarity. And what we find is that when couples have that shared picture, when everything is out in the open and there's a plan, the anxiety that was driving that silence in the first place tends to melt away.
Because a lot of the secrecy in blended family finances doesn't come from dishonesty. It comes from anxiety. And a lot of the anxiety comes from the unknown. There are risks in every family's financial life that aren't visible until someone helps you look. That's exactly what we're here for. If you're in a blended family and some of what we've talked about today sounds familiar, we want you to know that it's one of the most common things that comes up in blended family financial planning, and it's very workable. The first step is just creating the space to look at it honestly.
Every family situation is different, which is exactly why there's no one size fits all answer. If you'd like to start a conversation about your family and what a coordinated plan could look like, we'd love to connect. The link to start a conversation with us at White Oak Planning is in the description.
If this video was helpful, please share it. You probably know someone in a blended family who needs to hear this. We'll see you in the next one.